Since the beginning of January, we've been reporting on how different countries are dealing with coronavirus. Some of them are also trying to contain other diseases at the same time. The outbreak of COVID-19 in the Democratic Republic of Congo was declared on the 10th of March this year. And a month later, when the country was preparing to celebrate the end of the Ebola outbreak that had killed more than 2,000 people, another person was found to have contracted Ebola, followed by 7 more. This leaves health workers trying to tackle 2 epidemics at once. From Goma, I'm joined by Head of Operations for the Red Cross in the DRC, Robert Gosson. So, Robert, what's happening at the moment with the Ebola outbreak?
Obviously, it was bad news to have a new case around 20 days ago, but there is a little bit of a glimpse of hope because we haven't seen a lot of cases since, and they all link to the same strain of contamination. So that makes us think or hope that this can be contained again. So we've strengthened our effort to engage with the communities and talk to them and make sure that they remain safe and they understand how to remain safe in their realities, which are very difficult realities and very different from one village to the other. And we've also strengthened, of course, the services we're providing to healthcare centers to make sure that they remain safe from Ebola and COVID, and also that they don't become hotspots where actually contamination happens, which is what happened historically in outbreaks. So we work very hard to make sure that does not happen.
And can the lessons from Ebola be put into practice with COVID-19? Because presumably with things like testing and tracing contacts and isolating people is something that the country is now very practiced at.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a key message for us. I mean, we've learned the hard way, unfortunately, some lessons from the Ebola response. And let me give you a couple of examples, so it's not just theoretical. So we've learned that top-down messaging does not work. It's not enough to say to people, stay home or wash your hands or don't do this or do that, because their realities are different. So how can you stay home when you live on a daily wage, and if you don't go to work, then you cannot feed your family? Can you wash your hands if you don't have water at hand to wash your hands, or if you work in a market where that is very, very crowded anyway, and where the lack of water is a problem? So top-down messaging does not work. We've learned this the hard way with Ebola, and you have to engage with people. You have to understand where they come from and help them design their own response and how to stay safe. And this is where the Red Cross role is crucial, because the Red Cross volunteers were at the forefront of this battle against COVID and Ebola. They come from these communities. They are your neighbor. They are your friend. They are your cousin. They are your son or daughter or husband, or for that matter. So they know exactly what the situation is. So they're not just repeating a message they've heard on TV or on radio or somewhere. They're actually trying to adapt that message to your reality. The other key message we've learned from Ebola is that we couldn't stop Ebola if we did not address issues such as economic insecurity, such as access to healthcare. And the same applies to COVID. It serves very little purpose to stop COVID if people are dying of measles and other diseases. And a third and last point for me is that epidemics begin with the communities and they end and they're contained with the communities. So the idea that you would stop an epidemic or a pandemic, for that matter, against the community by forcing some rules on them just doesn't work. Like the people who are suffering from the epidemic are the people who can stop it, and you really have to listen to them. And people are smart. People understand. Now, there's a reason why they behave in a certain way, and if you don't understand that reason, it's not good enough to say, well, they should have listened to us. They wouldn't have caught COVID-19. No. The real question is that there's a reason why they behave the way they behave, and that usually has to do with their livelihoods. And then you have to adapt that message if you want them to maintain their livelihoods and stop COVID-19 or Ebola.
And sometimes in epidemics, there can be a problem where misinformation gets spread around and where there are rumours that aren't necessarily true. Do you have a way of somehow finding out what these rumours are that are going around and countering those?
Yes, this is a huge problem in epidemics and in other situations. And we've set up a very impressive, if I may say, system whereby the Red Cross volunteers go door to door. They engage with the community. They not only convey Ebola and COVID prevention messages and adapt them to the context, as I've said earlier. That's one part of their job. But there's another part which is super important and crucial. They listen to what people say. So people would reply saying, no, Ebola does not exist. Ebola is an invention. Ebola was invented by whoever for whatever reason. And we take very careful note of that. And then we have a system where that feedback goes up the chain and gets analyzed. And then we improve the messaging based on that feedback. So next time a volunteer runs across the same rumor, he or she would know what to say and will know where it's coming from. And then we test these messages and then we see how convincing they are. And if they are not convincing, we try to improve them.
Thank you very much, Robert Gosson from the Red Cross.